everybody, and welcome back to Mario Movie Updates. And this is going to be a very special episode because the very first teaser trailer for the Super Mario Bros. Movie is finally out, and people are loving it, hating it, or they haven't seen it because they have better things to do. This is a pretty big moment for me anyway, because I've been talking about this movie for years, and yeah, this is actually happening. And for me as a Mario fan, a huge Mario fan, this is still very surreal to me. What's even crazier to me is just looking at the visuals and the art style, it looks amazing. Like, sometimes you look at it and you forget that it's an Illumination project because the animation is just on a whole other level of quality that, in my opinion, their other films just haven't really gotten to. So I slaved over this trailer to try and find every single little detail, reference, Easter egg that I can find. Some of these I don't know are references, but these are just things that I pointed out. And I came up with a pretty long list of things, and I noticed that not many other people have done like these kind of in-depth breakdowns yet. I know Game Explain did an analysis of the trailer, because of course they did, but even theirs wasn't really that in-depth. So here you are, you're gonna get a full New Rockstars style breakdown and analysis of this teaser trailer. I'm also gonna be talking about the McDonald's leaks a little bit, so just be prepared for that. Alright, so the trailer opens with Bowser and his army arriving in this sort of icy kingdom that doesn't seem to be based on any particular ice world from the Mario games. I mean, the scenery, like the backgrounds, remind me a lot of World 4 from New Super Mario Bros. U. And the buildings in the distance have these rounded roofs, and they sort of resemble Greek architecture, which reminds me of the Lake Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey, which was also based heavily on Greek architecture. And then Bowser and his army arrive on this huge floating fortress with this rock formation on the front of it that resembles Bowser's face, similar to the version of Bowser's castle that lifts Peach's castle up into space in the original Paper Mario. I'm guessing this isn't just like a giant floating fortress. I think this is actually Bowser's kingdom, because we can see it's gigantic compared to like this little city that we see down here. And it's got this huge lava pit surrounded by these spiked rock formations similar to a lot of final locations in Mario games. And it's also where we can see Bowser's castle. And it's interesting here to see that it looks like it's kind of built into a volcano, because we can see the lava inside it at the top, and it just sort of oozes out into another Bowser head structure, and it sort of cascades down like a lava waterfall, which is really cool. So the fortress also uses these spike balls on chains to anchor itself down. Now, spike balls have been a thing in the Mario series for a long time. They're commonly associated with Spike and Lakitu, of course, although those are technically Spinies. And then we get our first shot of Bowser's army, which mostly consists of Koopa Troopas, and also Paratroopas, since you can see these front Koopas have wings on the back of them. They carry flags with the Bowser insignia from the games, and I like how the Koopas in front here are wearing armor themed after different Koopa-related species or Koopa-related items from the series. So in this first shot, we see this Koopa on the left wearing these red shoulder pads with white spikes on them. So it looks like his armor is themed after the Spinies. And then this one on the right here has blue shoulder pads with no spikes on them, and they look very similar to the Buzzy Beetle shells. We also see these other Koopas in the back wearing helmets and elbow pads and shoulder pads. Many of them are carrying spears, and the tips look a lot like the tops of Koopa Troll helmets from Paper Mario. The fact that they're carrying spears could also be a nod to the Spear Guy enemies, even though none of them are Shy Guys, although I'm sure we're going to see Shy Guys in this movie somewhere. And then we get our first look at Kamek, voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, who's completely unrecognizable, to me anyway. Now, Kevin Michael Richardson has a very distinct voice. Like, even when he's putting on a voice for a character, you can still tell that it's him voicing them. But with Kamek, he does kind of like a Peter Lorre impression. Like, you can even see he's kind of got a hunch, like a hunchback, and he just disappears into the role. Everybody just sings the praises of Jack Black as Bowser, and yeah, he is amazing, and we'll get to him in a second. But let's not sleep on Kevin Michael Richardson. Just from the small amount of lines that he's given, in fact, I think he only has one line in this whole trailer, he is phenomenal in this role. Actually, speaking of his line, when he first shows up, he refers to Bowser as King of the Koopas, which is a title that he hasn't really been associated with for a long time. He's referred to as King of the Koopas in the American version of Super Mario Bros. 3, and in the manual of the original Super Mario Bros. Another thing about Kamek's appearance is that he's much thinner than he's usually depicted as in the games, and I don't know why I find that so interesting. Also, if you look closely when Kamek first appears in this puff of magic smoke, you can see these triangles and circles and squares. And this is notable because these same shapes are commonly associated with his magic in the Mario games. And then we finally get our first look at Bowser, voiced by Jack Black. Now let's talk about the voice for a second. Everybody's had their own opinions on the casting of the Mario movie, but the one thing that everybody seemed to agree on is that Jack Black was a perfect choice for Bowser. And yeah, he sounds incredible. If you didn't know that Jack Black was voicing the character, you probably wouldn't be able to point him out in a lot of these scenes. Like, you probably could, especially later on when more of the Jack Black voice comes out. But for most of this, like Kevin Michael Richardson, he just disappears into the role. I'm loving Jack Black's Bowser so far. And his design is incredible as well. This design seems to be based heavily on Bowser's appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, with the more detailed scales and textures, and just the proportions remind me so much of his Smash Ultimate appearance. And then in this overhead shot when Bowser comes out of the fortress, we can see that amongst the Koopa army, some of them appear to be standing next to these Bullet Bill blasters. They could be something else, but I don't know. They look so much like Bullet Bill blasters that I can't really imagine them being anything else. Bowser demands that they open the gates. And on the other side, we get penguins! Specifically the penguins from Super Mario 64. Now, I might be stretching it a little bit here, but I noticed that a lot of these penguins are wearing this kind of rebel gear, like these sort of black belts and scarves or straps. I don't know if this was intentional, but I think this could be a nod to the Pencoon enemy from the first Wario Land game, who are also these kind of penguin soldiers. I should also note that the Penguin King here is voiced by Kari Payton, who also voices Cyborg on Teen Titans Go, a show that the directors of this movie, Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelenic, are also the creators of. The Penguin King and his army try to fend off Bowser's forces by throwing snowballs at them. I should note that snowballs can also be used as items and projectiles in Super Mario 3D World, but the snowballs here don't seem to have an effect on them, except for this one Koopa Troopa who just gets annihilated. And as this Koopa gets hit with a snowball, you can see this one on the right here is wearing this blue armor with white spikes. And I think he's the only member of this army to actually have spikes on his helmet too. It's pretty clear just from looking at him that his armor is themed after the blue shell item from the Mario Kart series. There's also a Koopa wearing an eye patch over here who lifts it up as this other Koopa gets hit with a snowball. I don't know, I just think that's a really funny detail. And then Kamek uses his magic to levitate the penguins and push them out of the way. We can see more of those geometric shapes from before. But when it cuts back to Kamek, you can see in the background that some of the penguins are being held captive by the Koopa Troopas, including this penguin, who I don't think is the king because the crown and the cloak are slightly different. Bowser breathes an excessive amount of fire and completely destroys this city. And if you look closely just above the door, you can see this sort of star-shaped insignia just above the door. This same insignia actually appears over the warp pipe that Mario comes out of in the next scene, and I wonder if there's some kind of connection between these places. Maybe they're supposed to be like shrines that hold these very special objects. In this case, the MacGuffins for this movie look like they're going to be the Power Stars, an item most commonly associated with the 3D Mario games, specifically Super Mario 64 and the Galaxy games, but they're also very prominent throughout most of the Mario Party games. Now, when Bowser obtains the Power Star, he says, "I finally found it." I think Bowser's plan is going to revolve around him storming these different parts of the Mushroom Kingdom, trying to get all these Power Stars to make himself more powerful. This movie could sort of be like a fetch quest, or like a race to see if Mario and Luigi can get the Power Stars before Bowser can. Or maybe they're going to have the brothers retrieve the Power Stars from Bowser's henchmen, like in Super Mario 64, although Luigi wasn't in that game. After Bowser delivers his final line in this trailer, we hear, of course, the opening notes of the classic Super Mario Bros. Theme. But if you listen very closely, these opening notes are exactly the same as the opening to the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because I get the feeling that this movie is going to be taking a lot from the DiC cartoons. Because the first time we see Mario in this trailer, he comes flying out of this warp pipe with blue light emanating from inside it. When Mario comes out of the pipe, we can hear the classic warp pipe sound from the games. And then when he's looking at his surroundings, he seems confused and bewildered, like he doesn't know where exactly he is. So I think this movie is actually going to be pulling from the cartoons in that they come from Brooklyn in the real world, and they found a secret warp while they were working on the drain, and then they find themselves in the Mushroom Kingdom. The structure could be based on the castles from the original Super Mario Brothers. And speaking of which, during this turnaround shot, if you look in the background, you can see the fortress from Super Mario Brothers. And in the same shot over on the left, we can see a Biddy-Bud walking around. Now Mario finds himself surrounded by all these mushrooms. The scenery heavily resembles the Field of Mushrooms from the anime film, The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach. And my friend Sky, who voices Marcy in my videos, also pointed out to me that Mario lying on the grass as a yellow butterfly goes past his face could be a nod to the ending of Super Mario Galaxy, when another yellow butterfly could be seen on Mario's hat when he wakes up in the Mushroom Kingdom. So, Sky, if you're watching this, good call. There are also these other butterflies and some flowers that look pretty much exactly the same as they do in the new Super Mario Brothers games. And going back to that turnaround shot, we can see more of those floating platforms in the sky with the waterfalls. They reminded me a lot of the Cascade Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey, which had very similar scenery. And then we get this overhead shot, really giving us a sense of scale, just seeing how big a lot of these mushrooms are and how small Mario must feel in this location. Now, over in the upper right corner, we see this structure that has these kind of vines covering it, and we see these little splotches of red and white, and with all the vines covering it, I think these might be piranha plants. But if you look at this river, there's no question about it. Those are definitely Cheeps swimming around. And then if you look in the lower right corner, you can see that red Biddy-Bud from before now has a little green buddy with him. And then we see these birds over on the left, which I'm pretty sure are supposed to be the birds from Super Mario 3D Land and Super Mario 3D World. Alright, now let's take a break to talk about Mario's design. Now, this was actually kind of spoiled for me because of the McDonald's leak that came out like a day before the trailer did. And I had a feeling that was real because the gloves that Mario was wearing were exactly the same as they were on the teaser poster with the openings on the sides. I really like Mario's design in this film. Obviously, it's different from the games. It's not exactly the same, but that's kind of what I was expecting. I was expecting them to look different, but still identical to their original appearances. And looking more at Mario's design in this trailer, I can see a lot of different influences. I see a lot of different versions of him. Like, he's got these really puffy cheeks like he does in Super Mario Kun in the manga. He's got this big belly like he does in the DiC cartoons, and both he and Luigi wear these collared button-up shirts like they do in the live-action segments from the Super Show. But just talking about Chris Pratt's performance, this is probably the most polarizing aspect of the whole trailer. I don't necessarily think it's fair to judge Chris Pratt based on, what, 2 lines that he has in this entire trailer, but just based off of those 2 lines, I think he sounds okay. Again, it's different, and I know a lot of you don't like different. I know there are people out there complaining that he's not using an Italian accent, but he's also been depicted as being from Brooklyn, and Chris Pratt is clearly trying to do a Brooklyn accent. Whether that accent is good or not, that's a whole other thing, but I think he sounds okay. I have to hear more of his performance to come up with a better opinion, so I'm just gonna wait for more stuff to come out. Right now, though, I don't really have any issues. I just hope that in the actual movie, it's not gonna be Chris Pratt as Mario. I want him to completely disappear into his role, like we've heard with Jack Black and Kevin Michael Richardson. I think he's going to be fine, so let's just wait and see how he does. Now, what I was saying before about this being an origin story for Mario and Luigi, as Mario is observing his surroundings, he says, "What is this place?" And I also want to point out that the line was also said by Mario when he and Luigi arrived in Dino Hatton in the live-action film. And then Mario meets Toad, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key. Keegan's Toad voice is great. I absolutely love it. Also, if you listen closely, when Mario approaches Toad for the first time, you hear this very soft squeak, which sounds very similar to the strolling stew enemies from Super Mario Sunshine. Toad is also wearing a backpack that bears a striking resemblance to Captain Toad's backpack, as we saw on the poster. And then Mario and Toad run off toward Peach's castle. And there's just a lot of detail here. I can't really be bothered to go through all of it. There are these multicolored platforms that we see throughout the Mario games. There are some toad houses off in the distance. Over on the left, there's what looks like a plantation field. And then, of course, Peach's castle just towers over everything else as it sits on top of this giant mountain. Now, Peach's castle is obviously based on the Mario 64 design, which is where it originated from. But this design seems to be kind of a simplified version of the one from Super Mario Odyssey, since the towers look more like they're floating. And if you look closely, you can also see a rainbow hovering over the castle. And the official title is revealed in this fancy schmancy title card, The Super Mario Brothers Movie, which surely will not cause any confusion at all. So I guess we have to call the live-action film the live-action Super Mario Brothers movie, or just Super Mario Brothers? I don't know. But speaking of which, I think the extra text could sort of be another nod to the live-action film, since it's got this kind of blue gradient pattern, and it's in more of like an industrial font. And then the trailer ends with our boy Luigi being chased by dry bones through the spooky woods, which look a lot like the scenery from Luigi's Mansion. And his design is very similar to Mario's, but like Mario, it seems to be taking a lot of influence from several different sources. His mustache is much thinner, like in the Deke cartoons, and he's very lanky and noodly, like in the Mario and Luigi games. And that's what I really like about the animation. The fact that the characters move in very different ways. So obviously there's a lot of squash and stretch, but the way Luigi moves feels very different from how Mario moves. He's very stretchy and very awkward and, again, noodly, while Mario is still bouncy, but it seems a little more controlled, like he's a little more confident. What I find interesting is that the dry bones pupils are glowing like this sort of bright red orangey color instead of yellow like it usually is in the games. As Luigi's being chased, he's running towards this castle in the distance with a Bowser flag on the top. I was thinking this could actually be Bowser's Kingdom, but it's more likely a different location since none of the scenery matches the fortress that we saw earlier in the trailer. And the castle is also totally different, so this could just be another kingdom that Bowser has conquered. Now, if we can try to figure out what exactly is happening here, I have two big guesses. One is that Mario and Luigi are trying to find a Power Star before Bowser, and I'm thinking they must have split up at some point, and now Luigi must have gotten into some kind of trouble, so now he's trying to make his way back to Mario so he can feel safe again. Or maybe Mario went off on his own and Luigi just stayed behind, but then somehow he gets word that Mario's in trouble, so now he's trying to catch up with him and make sure he stays safe. Because there was a lot of speculation about Luigi's role in this film, like whether he was going to be like a main character alongside Mario, or if he's actually going to be a side character going on his own journey. Now, me personally, I wouldn't mind if he had his own side story because he's still getting a lot of focus. But then again, this movie is called the Super Mario Brothers movie. Now, of course, they could have gone with that name because Super Mario Brothers is a more recognizable name. Like, everybody's played Super Mario Brothers, the game, at some point in their lives, I'm sure. From a story perspective, it'd be kind of weird if we had a Super Mario Brothers movie and it was just mostly about Mario, because that's something that the live-action film actually got right. It knew to make the relationship between the brothers the central focus. But I really hope Luigi ends up being a central character in this film, instead of just being pushed off to the side like he is in some of the other games. Because if done right, I think the relationship between Mario and Luigi could be a really strong and powerful emotional center. But anyway, that's just what I'm hoping for. And with that, I think that's about everything that this trailer has to offer. Of course, there might be some details I missed, but in some cases, like the Mushroom Kingdom shot, it's mostly just generic Mario scenery, so there's not really anything interesting to talk about with a lot of that. Although, I am just completely amazed at how closely this resembles the games. They're just pulling out all the stops. I also appreciate the fact that none of the typical illumination tropes that I normally don't like are in this trailer. I feel like this is going to be a very big and epic sort of movie, but with these little moments of humor and silliness that you kind of want from Mario. I can see how this could take inspiration from the Adventures comics, for example, because those have a lot of big action set pieces, but they're still rooted in this very silly and very goofy kind of tone. And it looks like this movie is going to be a very similar story. And of course, the visuals are just one piece of the puzzle, because while this movie looks incredible, what really matters is, of course, the story and the characters. And I don't want this to be like a so bad it's good kind of thing. I want this to be genuinely good. I want it to be heartfelt and charming and likable. I want the characters to have development. I want there to be actual depth. I want it to be coherent and comprehensible. I want this to be a movie that non-Mario fans, like people who haven't played a lot of Mario games, can watch and enjoy. But I especially want this to be an absolute treat for hardcore Mario fans like me and a lot of you watching this. So right now, based off everything I've seen, this looks incredibly promising. Any doubts or fears that I had before are for the most part completely gone, because it looks great, it looks like Mario, it feels like Mario, but we have another 6 months or so before the movie actually comes out. So we'll just have to wait and see if any additional trailers or commercials end up looking better than this does. But what did you think of this trailer, loyal viewers? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you disappointed? Were you surprised? Were there things that you wanted to see but you didn't get? Were there things that you were really taken aback by? Like, were there things that you weren't expecting to see but you're glad that you did? And were there also any details that I missed? Any major details, for that matter? Let me know in that comment section down there. And I can promise you now that whatever additional footage comes out, we'll be here to break it down and analyze it like we did with this trailer today. And if you're new to this channel and you want to see more of these videos, be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell and all that generic YouTuber talk. And until next time, this is Mark, bidding you all a smashing farewell. Be cool, behave, be safe, and I'll see you guys later.